How's it going, hockey fans? This is episode 85 of the Clappercast. I'm Burke, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Sean. Sean, how's it going?
Pretty good. I think watching this Oilers-Habs game right now through the first period, Montreal outshot Edmonton like 15-5 or something, but Edmonton managed to score on their fifth shot.
Ooh.
And I think Montreal learned a lesson to never let the Oilers get 5 shots in a period.
That's always such a heartbreaker when you're just demolishing a team with shots on goal, and then your goalie lets in one of the first shots. It's just like, oh man.
Yeah, and it was like right at the end of the period, like 30 seconds left. Montreal dominated the whole time. Such a heartbreaker.
Is it Allen in net or Price?
I believe it is Price.
Man, that's rough. There's been kind of a lot of talk about Carey Price this season. I mean, there's always talk about Carey Price because he's on the Habs and everyone talks about the Habs goalies, but he's just, hasn't been quite the same. I mean, they fired their goaltending coach and brought in Sean Burke. Shout out to us, by the way, for
yeah, we're actually in Montreal right now. We're the new goaltending coach for the Habs.
Yeah, finally we made it.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, they've had like a change in the goaltending coaching there, and Allen's been playing a lot more than I think originally was expected, and so it's just kind of interesting to see what happens there. And obviously when you make $10 million or whatever he's at, it's a lot of scrutiny put on you, and so when that happens to your team, though, that's just like such a heartbreaker going into the dressing room after coming out flying and having a good start to the game, and then it's just like, stabbed in the back by a goal against. So
yeah, such a momentum killer. And I mean, like you said, there's been a lot of talk about Price, like there always is. It's not even like his numbers are terrible this season. I mean, 2.7 goals against average, 902 save percentage, and the 902 is a bit low, but it's also a factor in there in the North Division, where there's 7,000 goals per game. So
yeah,
the adjusted numbers for the normal NHL, it's probably doing okay.
Yeah, he's still a good goalie, but I think people just expect him to be great, since he won that Vezina.
Well, especially going back to his Hart season, when he basically just carried the team the whole way.
Yeah.
They see that, and that becomes the expectation, and then he kind of falls back to being above average or whatever his normal is, and there's a lot of disappointment around Montreal.
Yeah, I mean he's not alone. Like you were saying, his numbers aren't terrible, but there's been a lot of goalies that are under scrutiny. I mean, every season it's like that, but like Freddie Anderson in Toronto is, we've talked about that. Just how he's kind of struggled in March, and his contract's up at the end of the year, and just kind of what are they going to do? Jack Campbell's been playing really well for them.
Jack Campbell's even started a few games in the last week or two here, so that's like, is Campbell kind of taking over the starter's role while Anderson's been slumping and hurt?
Yeah, I think so. Like, that's kind of how it happens, right? It's never really announced that, yeah, we're switching to this guy to be the starter. It's just like, play the hot hand, especially going into playoff season. The Caps did that with Grubauer, and it's really looking like the wrong move. I know that wasn't really possible to keep him, but he's turned into a really good goalie, and Holtby has really declined, especially in Vancouver. I mean, he wasn't great with his last couple of years there for Washington, but man, he's not great this season. But yeah, anyway, a lot of goalies that are kind of transitioning around in their careers, shall we say, where they're either kind of losing the starter reign or it's slipping a little bit.
Yeah. Well, while we're on that note, especially with Vancouver, one of their future stars here just signed his first big NHL deal in Thatcher Demko, who signed a 5-year, $5 million per year extension this past week.
That's Robin Leonard's music.
What? Braden Holtby now has a sword in his back.
Yeah.
So I was wondering what you thought about that contract on some first impressions.
Yeah, I think it was kind of like the Bennington one, where it was like, that doesn't seem like an outrageous amount of money, but I mean, he hasn't played that much games in the NHL. He has been really good for stretches of it, but last season when he was called upon to replace Markstrom near the end of the season, he wasn't great, looked shaky. He's been really good this season, but it's not a lot of games. So, I think this one's going to turn into either a steal or a bad contract, depending on which way Demko goes. If he continues to play this way, then it's going to be a really good contract for the Canucks and a bad contract for Demko, because he could have, held out a little bit longer and see how the rest of the season goes. But if his numbers slip and, it turns out he was just hot, then it could turn into a bit of a bad deal for the Canucks. And, it's going to be really important for them because they have, Quinn Hughes and Pettersson to sign at the end of this season. And so I thought it was good for them to get one done.
Especially at a reasonable price too, if assuming Demko lives up to his potential, because he's been touted as a top goalie prospect here for years. Mm-hmm. So if they can lock him down for 5 years to push them into a cup window for $5 million per, that probably frees up, an extra couple million to keep some of their other young guys. Yeah,
for sure. And, they ended up saving about $1 million from Markstrom's contract that he ended up signing with the Flames. And so it'll be really interesting to watch as, a self-proclaimed fan of Markstrom and, someone who's interested in the Canucks, to see kind of how that storyline progresses down the years here, because Markstrom's in Calgary. He's at a 6x6. Demko's on a 5x5, the younger goalie. So it'll be interesting to see how those pan out and how this contract turns out. But I think ultimately it's a good thing. Like I said, it's good that they kind of made one happen before the end of the season, and so at the end of the day, they have one signed, and they have a little bit less work to do because, as we found out at last offseason, when Jim Benning has too many things to do, things slip and people leave, and so. Having one less thing, one less task, one less name on his list is very, very important, I think, for the Canucks. So good for them.
Jim Benning's got to hire a full-time to-do list organizer to keep him on track.
Yeah. You don't want to let somebody like Tyler Toffoli go again, so.
Because you're too busy worried about Oliver Ekman-Larsson.
Yeah. Oliver Ekman-Larsson gave us by the end of Friday, so we have to put all of our eggs in one basket and not talk to absolutely anybody else. So, yeah. So at least Demko's done, and they can not worry about it, for the remainder of this season. But yeah, what did you think of the contract overall?
Yeah, I agree with you pretty much with it being like it could be a reasonable number. Signing earlier, the Canucks got a good deal probably. Like you said, he's a guy who has had like basically one good playoff series and half a good season, because let's be honest, the Canucks as a whole were pretty rough to start the season, and that included Demko. He wasn't able to make as many saves as he needed to, partly because of the defense in front of him. But he's been good lately. He's got a ton of potential, and he's been talked about as like the future goaltender for the Canucks for years now. The closest comparables on this contract are, Freddie Anderson, like we were talking about before. His contract's coming up. The contract he's coming off of is a 5x5 that he signed with Toronto back in 2016, I think. So that's the closest comparable. And Freddie Anderson gave Toronto a few good years. He's struggled a bit now, but that's kind of a reasonable price and a solid range for that type of goalie. Jake Allen's most recent contract as well, it was 4 years, $4.35 million that he signed with St. Louis a few years back. That's also a pretty close comparable, and he was kind of touted, I think, as a little bit more when he went to St. Louis for that or when he signed that contract, but that's still, for the quality of goalie he is, that's not a bad deal at all. Mm-hmm. And I think overall it's a bit soon because, like you said, he has not played many games in the NHL. I think he's only around like 100 maybe, if that. But it's not a terrible one, so there's no real major complaints about it.
Yeah. The path he's on, he should get better and better. He's still young. They've a really good goalie coach there.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it makes sense overall for them. It's just, it was kind of, I didn't know that that discussion was happening mid-season, so it was kind of surprising to see that come through. But it makes sense because they do have 3 very important RFAs at the end of the season. So, yeah, it made a lot of sense for that to happen. And speaking of the Canucks, obviously that's one of the major headlines in the NHL right now is just kind of what the Canucks are going through. And, unless you live under a rock, you've probably heard of this, that the Canucks are dealing with a major COVID outbreak, where I think it's about 20 now. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yeah, it's in that range, just over or just under, depending on the source.
And so it's players, it's coaches, it's staff members, it's family members. It's just affecting. It's just tearing through that team, and it's just brutal. And it's allegedly, I think, a variant, the P1 variant, is rumored to be involved, and so that's what's accounting for the rampant rate of transmission. And that makes sense because BC is going through, an increase in the overall numbers here, and the variants are affecting young people very aggressively compared to the original variant, I guess, of COVID, the original
original virus, I guess.
And so, we're seeing that just kind of in general is that younger people are getting hit quite hard with it, and it can be quite serious. And apparently the Canucks, there are symptomatic cases, and so it's pretty scary that, it just tore through their team that fast. In a matter of days.
Yeah, in a matter of 3 days, it went from Adam Gaudette being pulled from practice one day, and 3 days later, 20 members of the 20 members of the team, from players to coaches, have all contracted it themselves, as well as spreading to families and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And whoever else is, we don't know what the full numbers are. I haven't seen an update today on the state of it or anything, but yeah, it's scary.
Definitely. It's
to put it lightly.
It's reminiscent of what happened to the Dallas Stars, where basically their entire team had it at the beginning of the season, but I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think it was the original strain of the virus. It wasn't a variant when that happened. But it was, I don't think it was quite as quick as this. And yeah, it's definitely scary that happened so quickly. And the league and the NHLPA put out memos that were basically saying, like, hey, remember, we have all of these protocols and procedures in place, and we're starting to see people slip on these. And so, like they specifically pointed out things like coaches bringing their mask down off of their face to talk to players or officials or other coaches. You see that on the broadcast. That's a really bad look for the league. I've seen that a lot where, they have coaches bring down their mask and yell at the ref or something. And it's like, well,
And then you've got DJ Smith taking his mask down to pull out a piece of gum to toss it into the stands at the end of the game.
Yeah. Well, you see all the players spitting on the ice in front of them and, drinking bottles and stuff. And it's like, I don't know if they're all specifically theirs, except for the goalies. But it's just like that spitting thing. I know that athletes do that, and I don't know if there's any specific reason that they do that. Like, it's almost like they do it so much that they have to be getting instructed to do it. Almost like it's so weird that they spit so much, right? Like, I don't know if there's something in their mouth, like with the amount of exertion that they do or something, and it's better to spit it than, I don't know. Anyway, it's like you'd think that they'd be like, hey, maybe don't do that right now.
Yeah,
because that's how
that should have been spreads. One of the first ones, is cutting that out. Yeah.
And so anyway, there's lots of stuff like that where it's like, yeah, the league, I don't know if spitting is, included in the protocols or anything, but it's just like the league put out this memo saying, like, we're really seeing people slip and breaking these protocols, and just a reminder memo of like, hey, follow these. And so I don't know if that was spurred by the Canucks specifically, but it just seems like very convenient timing for that to happen. And it could just be a reminder to, like, hey, this is serious. This is how fast it can happen. Just a reminder to everybody else, like, that's why these are in place. But I don't know if there was any sort of like, we've looked at the Canucks and have deemed them to have done something incorrect, or if it was just that reminder thing.
I think the very blatant "we've done something incorrect" is still continuing practice after Gaudette got pulled and then having morning skate the day after.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's the very incorrect part of their handling of it.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely the wrong call, and Gaudette was hiking with Brock Besser, and then Besser tested negative, I think, and they allowed him to keep playing it. I don't know if Besser's on the list of players who have it, but, like there can
I haven't seen him on there yet.
Can be false negatives, like, or you could be, you could have it, but the virus hasn't been in your body long enough to test.
Yeah, it's either pre-symptomatic or asymptomatic, or you just didn't get it high enough viral load, but you still
and so it's
have
like,
it.
Well, he was with a guy who tested positive yesterday. Like, he shouldn't have been, like, he had close contact with that person, and so he shouldn't have been in there. It's like, use some common sense here. Like, if this guy was with this guy yesterday hiking, like, I don't know if they took the same vehicle or separate vehicles or whatever, but like, they're exerting themselves in close contact. They're probably not wearing masks.
Yeah, that's the hard part, because we don't have like a video of them hiking, of course, and like they're outside, so technically, risk of transmission is lower. But yeah, it's a thing. They were together in close-ish proximity the day before. Got a test positive the next day. They pull him from practice, keep practice going without shutting it down and sending people off and cleaning everything, and then they have morning skate the next day to bring everyone back together again.
Yeah,
and that day. Later the day of that morning skate, that they canceled the game 30 minutes prior to it because the test results came back and more players had contracted it. So you have to imagine that it's going back a couple of days at that point too.
Well, and like the thing is, like, I don't know if that was a break of the protocol.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah,
that could have just been like they could have, other teams could have been doing that the whole time of like, they remove a player and they get added to the COVID list, but they still practice and stuff, even though they were like, just saw them like yesterday, right? And so it's like with this one, it's like it's happening so fast, and it just seems like to us, like, yeah, like, why would you do the morning skate? But it's like, maybe the protocol was followed, but maybe it wasn't. I don't know. It's just,
I think I remember a situation earlier where I think it was when Tomas Hertl was put on the COVID list that the Sharks still had they pulled him off of everything. I don't think he was pulled from practice or anything, but they canceled like their practice that day when Hertl was added to the COVID list just out of precaution. I don't know if that was a morning skate. I don't know if his was like a false positive or anything, but like, I think I saw something like that happen earlier.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like, definitely err on the side of caution, you would think. With like, hey, this guy tested positive yesterday. Hey, or today, let's keep him in practice. Let's keep the practice going here. Like, I don't know. It just seems weird because like guys will line up for drills and stuff, like right behind each other, right in front of each other, and group up to hear what the coach is saying and stuff. And it's like, I don't know. You'd think that would be like, hey, let's postpone until we test everybody.
Yeah, just like as a cautionary thing, even not necessarily. Or, yeah, exactly. Just as a precaution, because this has happened. Everyone's around each other. Let's just stop.
I'm just surprised. Just surprised that they didn't have a game against Buffalo.
Yeah,
Buffalo Sabres have just had such a wild ride, and I was just listening to some of the old episodes we had, and we were talking about Buffalo and just how like, potential reasons for what's going on here. And it's just kind of, I laughed a little bit because neither of us really talked about the COVID thing, but it's like they've been hit so hard by COVID, and like, we've talked about it with like Mika Zibanejad and how he got hit hard with it, but it's like the Sabres have had like multiple times when they've had to like stop and like, go through all of this, and they've had players on the list, and like
a guy like Rasmus Ristolainen, who was hit very hard with it, to the point that it was like a struggle for him to get back into the lineup. And then another knock against Ralph Kruger in his time there, when he kept playing Ristolainen like 20 plus minutes a night. And like a week prior to this, Rista was like bedridden basically.
Yeah.
And Ristolainen's like,
I'm dying.
Ristolainen's like, I don't know how I'm doing this, or it's like I was so out of shape, and Kruger's like, here's more ice time.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, I was like that's tough to give your best when you're like you're just sick. Like that's just really tough. And so like, yeah, Buffalo's kind of like the laughing stock of the league, but I think we should definitely not downplay the fact that they've been affected by COVID a lot. Like one of the top teams in the league, I think, that's been affected by that. And so like, just keep that in mind a little bit, that I'm not trying to like wash away the issues that team is having, but it's like, people are on like Rasmus Dahlin for like not checking people and stuff, and it's like, yeah, that might be an issue with his game, but it's like, well, this guy probably had COVID. It's like, he's probably doing as much as he can, but like when he's playing like 25 minutes a night or whatever, it's like, yeah, things are gonna slip because he's tired and exhausted, and the team sucks, and his mental game is not positive. And so it's just they've had a lot go wrong for them on ice, but the off ice stuff is for sure been really challenging for that team.
In one of the funnier moments of the past week here was Nathan MacKinnon getting fined $5,000 for politely giving Connor Garland his helmet back. I don't know why this is being frowned upon by the league, but like, it's a penalty to not have your helmet on when you're on the ice, and McKinnon's just trying to prevent Garland from getting a penalty. That's sportsmanlike, if you ask me.
Yeah, like honestly, I thought it was hilarious, and to see like Sportsnet announcers like giving McKinnon shit for that is just so funny. It's like, and they're like saying that in the same breath as like talking about McDavid's like elbow to the head of Kotkaniemi. It's like, those are not the same at all. It's like he underhand tossed the guy's helmet at him after like a scrap.
I know why he got fined, because you're not supposed to be throwing equipment at players on the ice. That's kind of that's over the line. But
they're just like, this is such a dangerous play because he has no helmet on. It's like, okay, like,
well, of course he's trying to give him the helmet.
He underhand tosses it at him. Like, it's not a big deal. Like, I don't know. It's just,
he didn't like fastball line.
Yeah, he didn't like overhand toss it at him. Like, it wasn't like a violent toss. He just like underhand like whip like wristed it at him. It's just so funny. Like, come on, like that's just a hilarious play. Like after like like almost fighting a guy, and then you just like toss his helmet at him. It's like such a sassy move to do, and it's so funny to see like McKinnon do that, just get fed up with the guy, because Connor Garland's just like annoying to play against, and then just gets fed up. And McKinnon had like 2 assists already in that game, and then he just like, hey, I'm not gonna take this crap. I'm just gonna take your helmet off and toss it at you. Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was so funny, and like McKinnon can obviously, like, the fines are just such a joke. Like, oh, here's like 5,000, which would be like a lot to like any normal person, but to a professional athlete, McKinnon probably makes that in a shift. So it's like whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean the other one, you alluded to it earlier, McDavid getting fined $5,000 for elbowing Jesperi Kotkaniemi in the face. Again, that's just a dumb play.
Yeah,
he's McDavid's going full Kucherov, where he's just getting pissy in a bad game and starts getting dirty. He's done it in the past. He's boarded guys. He's boarded guys in the past in games like that are just getting tough, or he's getting stifled completely. It's not a good look at all.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that he didn't get a game for it, to be honest, because it was like a blatant high elbow. I don't know what else he would have been doing.
Yeah, he put the
elbow
there. It wasn't. That was like a chicken wing, right?
Yeah, he like skates by him, and like as he's skating to like in front of Kotkaniemi, he like throws the elbow back up high. And I don't know. I just like, if that was not McDavid, if that was somebody else, I would have thought they would have got a game for that. And so I think he got the benefit of the doubt for that. But I was kind of surprised he didn't get more than a fine.
I was expecting at least a hearing, right? Like, I don't think they had a hearing. They just announced the fine the next morning. I was kind of surprised that I was expecting a game.
Yeah.
Just because it was so blatant. It wasn't like it wasn't like a gray area one where it's just he's throwing a hit and his shoulder gets caught up in a guy's face. Like, no, he put the elbow there.
Yeah, like Tom Wilson would have got like 15 games for that.
20?
Yeah. Yeah, it was like I just thought it was blatant. And so would have probably liked to see a game there because it was just, straight in the head. And yeah, it was like that emotional, like, hey, my team's losing. I'm getting kind of pissy about it. And like a hit that didn't really need to happen. It's like you're trying to get weird body position on him and then like throw him backwards. It's just a weird play all around. But yeah, I would have only liked to have seen like one game there, so it's not like they, really dropped the ball, but it's just, I don't know. I guess has McDavid ever been suspended?
Yeah, he got I think it was 2 games for that play on, I believe it was Nicoletti a couple years back.
Okay.
Where he skated through and caught him in the head.
Right. All right, so repeat offender didn't get looked at.
Absolute goon, Connor McDavid.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand here, should we talk about fining Jesperi Kotkaniemi for his face dangerously targeting McDavid's elbow?
Yes, absolutely. How about Kotkaniemi endangering Corey Perry on the bench when he fucking went apeshit on his own stick? Did you see that?
I didn't see this. No, I didn't.
So it was in a game this weekend against the Senators when the Habs were losing in that game. They ended up losing, I think, like 6-4 or 6-3 or something like that. And Kotkaniemi like skates to the bench and he just went livid on his stick and was just mashing it against the boards, and the blade like flew by Corey Perry, and Corey Perry just like looks at it and he's just like, what? And then he like continues to like smash his stick on the bench like beside Corey Perry, and it's just like, what are you doing? Like, and then yesterday in a game between the Capitals and the Devils, I think it was Severson, he missed it, or he actually got robbed by Samsonov on a 2-on-1. It was like a sweet pass by Hughes, and Severson tried to put it above Samsonov, and he was like all stretched out and gloved it. Like, it was a huge save. And Severson skates to the bench, goes down the tunnel. You can just see like the slightest bit of him, and you can just see that he's like freaking out, like smashing his stick around all over the place in the tunnel. Just like breaking that twig, like, oh,
yeah. I think it's been a rough stretch for Severson. I think he's been in a bit of a slump. He hasn't been doing a whole lot, able to do a whole lot.
Yeah, you could really see the frustration.
So.
It was just funny. Like, the Caps crew was just laughing. Like, yeah, I think he's wanting a new stick there. Like, he had the wherewithal.
So that's like the equivalent. That's like the equivalent of the baseball player going and taking it out on the Gatorade thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. But it's just funny because like the Caps crew was like, well, at least he had like the the wherewithal to go down the tunnel, so you couldn't see him. And like they didn't reference the Kotkaniemi thing, and I didn't know if they had seen it or not. But it was just funny that there's like the two different, like the juxtaposition between like a younger player, like taking his frustration out visibly on the bench, and then like I don't think Severson's that old either. But, at least like going down the tunnel and just, doing that sort of privately was just interesting how there's two players in like different circumstances taking out their frustration the same way, but in a kind of a different, a different area. So like, yeah, like you get frustrated, and like he waited until he got to the bench and went down the tunnel, like, and then freaked out. But like he didn't like, do it on the bench where the cameras are and stuff. So it's just kind of
where the cameras are, where his teammates are within range of his stick blade flying and catching him in the face.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I know it's like a stupid, immature thing to do, to like break your stick, but like everybody in the league does that when they lose or something. They just like smash their stick. But a more mature thing to do.
That's a thing. Like when taking out pent up anger and frustration by breaking stuff. It's a thing.
Absolutely, and he absolutely got robbed. Like it was a nice save too. And the game before, like the Vanacek was in net, and he robbed Hughes in overtime too, and then Orlov went down and scored. And so like they were getting some nice play by their goalies lately, the Capitals. So, but yeah, just kind of funny to see the contrast between like taking your anger out like visibly to everybody, and then like a little bit more privately. And it was just so funny. Like I'll have to send you the clip if I can find it, but like you can just see like a little bit of him. Like you can't even see like the whole thing, but you just see like a small crack of like the tunnel, and then him like his shin pad and like the stick like flying around or something.
It's like, what the hell's going on down there?
It's pretty funny.
Now we've been doing a lot of this lately, John Tortorella bashing, but we've got yet another thing to add to this saga with John Tortorella in Columbus, because he just scratched Jack Roslovic a couple of games ago, and he cited coach's decision. I don't want to explain it. And now he's when's he going to healthy scratch Laine, first of all? But now both of the players that he's that have been brought in for Dubois are seemingly in his doghouse.
Yeah, because he said about Laine that he wants to make him into a power forward, and then Laine was basically like, "I've never done that." Like,
yeah,
I've always shot the puck. I've never gone into the corners. Like, that's.
I don't know what he wants from me.
And it's like, yeah, like why you're gifted like one of the players in the league with like the best shot, and you're going to try and change him into Pierre-Luc Dubois, like essentially. That's what you're trying to do.
Basically.
But just a winger, not a centerman. It's like, oh, wow, you had a player that could have done that, but you chased him out of town. Now you have another player who's, gifted in a different way. You're trying to make him the last guy, and you're going to chase him out of town. And then, Roslovic.
And now you have a guy who fits into your system.
A local guy.
Sort of a local guy who fits into your system, and you're going to try and chase him out of town too. And it's not even like Roslovic was bad.
Yeah, he's really good.
He had one game where he had like no score sheet impact. And then, but otherwise, like it's a reasonable contribution for what his role is like a midline forward. A couple of shots per game, a couple of hits per game, and a couple of points every 5 games or so. It's like perfect production from a guy who's probably a second, third line forward at the best. And he's healthy scratches him because he has one bad game.
Yeah. It's just Tortorella's quote.
Shots, I don't know.
Tortorella's quote where he's basically said, like, I don't like to sit players. I don't like to bench players. It's like, yeah, you do.
You're the only coach in the league who has like this reputation as like that's part of your thing.
Like every game.
I can't think of any other coach who is, I don't want to say accused of benching players, but like has players benched attached to him as often as John Tortorella does.
Yeah, like undoubtedly every coach in the league benches guys. Like every coach does that when a guy like has a bad game or whatever. And it's like, well, you know what? Like, see ya. Like we're reducing your ice time. And it's like, yeah, but that's not like their coaching style.
Yeah,
it's a tool. Like it's a tool in the toolbox, right? But they've also have other tools in there. But Tortorella has one. Like, you're benched.
He has one tool and it's just a giant bench.
Yeah, he's got a bench in his toolbox and that's it. Like, that's the only thing he knows how to do is like, I'm going to bench you. It's not like, hey, maybe let's like put you in a position to succeed. Or like, hey, maybe I'll give you offensive zone faceoffs if you're having a poor defensive game. And then like, I expect you to like work on this in practice or something, but like I'm not going to put you out there if you're not doing a good job, like that would make sense. Like, hey, let's try and focus on what you're good at this game for the rest of this game. You might see your ice time decrease, but it's not going to be zero. Like literally zero for like the last 2 periods of the game or whatever. It's
whole
like
game.
Yeah, I mean like Seth Jones and Werenski have been bad at times this season. Like they're still playing a lot. I don't know. It's just like,
well, it goes back to that quote from Pierre LeBrun where he was genuinely questioning whether or not Tortorella was trying to get fired. And it's just another one in this list of decisions where it's like it doesn't make any sense.
No. Yeah, because like Roslovic has been a good player for them. He wants to be there. He's a like good player for them, And it's like, yeah, coach's decision. Let's I was like, oh, okay, well, who are you gonna bring into the lineup? Like some exciting, dynamic forward prospect? No. Like he'll probably dress 7D or something. Like I don't know. I would hate to be a player there, because like you just never know if you're gonna piss him off by like one shift, and it's like
walking on eggshells.
Yeah, it's like players are gonna make mistakes. Like every shift, somebody makes a mistake. Like not every player doesn't make. A single player doesn't make a mistake each shift, but like somebody out there does, right? I guess you're not perfect. That's why sports is so fun to watch. Just if everybody had a perfect shift every game, every shift, it'd be boring. Everybody would just play dump and chase. And like, it'd just be so boring. So, like, you have to accept that players are going to make mistakes. They're not going to be perfect. Players are going to get out-muscled. They're going to get out-moved, like out-dangled. Like, that's how good the NHL is. And so, like, yeah, you can work on that. Like, look at the tape, be like, hey, like this, when this happened, I would have liked you to do this. Try and be more of a coach to players, and less of like a headmaster, like punishing them for like, hey, you were tardy on this shift. Like, you showed up late.
Yeah, you stayed out for 1 second too long.
Yeah. I don't know.
It seems like he's really just kind of one of those coaches that's now worn out his welcome. Like kind of one of those guys who comes in, he gets a bunch out of the team immediately, and then everyone just kind of calls his bluff and doesn't really listen anymore. And now he's just kind of like retaliating, where it's like guys aren't listening, so he has to step it up.
Yeah.
And he's not stepping it up in a good way. He's just taking it out on the players.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of like, the word like, or the term like lost the room gets thrown around a lot. But it's like, it looks like Torts has just lost the room because guys aren't buying into the system. And then he's like, his only move is to bench them or to healthy scratch them. And it's like, okay, well, maybe your system sucks, and the players that we have would do better in a different system. So either you need to change it, which you probably can't do mid-season, or we need to bring somebody else in.
Yeah, and, we've kind of seen and talked about this, that it doesn't really seem like Tortorella has the ability to change his system or adapt it to what he has. I think guys like Panarin and Duchesne struggle there because they couldn't really fit into what Torts wanted. They just kind of powered their way into, playing their way, but ultimately the system and the team around them didn't change, and he's still doing that. Like, he couldn't find a way to make Pierre-Luc Dubois fit. He obviously cannot find a way to make Patrick Laine fit. Now he's got a guy who fits into his system, but he's scratching him anyways. But at a certain point, the coach has to realize, like, okay, I want to do this with my team. He wants this team to be gritty, grindy, shot blocking, hitting, but he has players who don't do that. He's got to find a way to adapt the system to fit these players and make use of their skill set. Like, if you want Patrick Laine to be a bit more physical and grindy, sure, but you can't completely change his play style, because ultimately he succeeds when he's left, in the high slot or wherever to shoot. Don't send him into the corners. He can't score there.
Yeah, just put him on a line with a guy who can do that.
Yeah.
Like, that's what you do. Put in the offensive zone. Make Laine the high guy, so that if the guy in the corner gets the puck, he can feed Laine and he can shoot. Right? Like, yeah, if the puck comes to by Laine, he should battle for it, but it's like he should be put in a position where he can shoot the puck and try and score every shift, because that's who he is as a player. He's a guy who can shoot and score. But trying to make him fit into your system, and he can adapt his game to fit into the system, but he shouldn't be like your grindy forward type.
Exactly.
Like, play him with like Foligno or somebody who can do that. Like,
yeah. Like, there's a middle ground where it's like Laine can adapt what he does to add in more grinding, more hitting, more physicality, but he doesn't need to completely change the player he is and completely negate or neglect his strengths and skill set to do that. Yeah. It's just a coach is trying to completely micromanage his player's play style to the point that it's detrimental to the team's performance, and Columbus has struggled mightily this season. They're second last in the division. 14, 18, and 8 record, 450 points percentage. They're just above Detroit. That's basically it.
Yeah. Yeah, like Panarin still had success there, but he kind of got to do his whatever. Like, for whatever reason, Torts just kind of let him run. And it's like, yeah, he's a really talented offensive player, and he can drive the play by himself. And I think Laine can't do that. Like, he can't drive the play by himself. He needs to be passed in a position where he can shoot. Like, Panarin can just, like, fly up the ice and, like, backhand roof it, or, like, make an insane pass to somebody. And, like, Laine is a good passer, but he's not, like, that guy. Like, he's not that player. And so you need to put him in a position you need to just use him properly. And Torts is just doing the exact opposite of that, and it's crazy. Like, I don't understand. He has to be on his way out. Like, if Kekalainen keeps him, like, he's the worst GM in the league.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't see a point in really making that change this season. I mean, granted, they are only 5 points out of a playoff spot right now with still 16 games to go. But I mean, by the time they get someone in and quarantined and ready to go, is it really worth it to make the change now, or do you just wait until the off season? Fire him the day after the season's over type deal.
Yeah, I think it's an off season thing for sure. But like, you gotta get rid of that guy. Like, I don't remember if I told you this on air or off air, but it's like, imagine Columbus with like Boudreaux. Like, they have the tools for offense. Like, they've got Laine, they've got Werenski, they've got Seth Jones, they've got Bjorkstrand, Atkinson. Like, they could be a fast shooting team, but they choose not to be. But
yeah, I mean, imagine a team that's got the freedom to run offensively with the physicality that they have. That's a hard to play against team. They can wear you down and still have the energy to go and score on you afterwards.
Yeah, and it's like not every
if you kind of find
so it's like not every line needs to play the same way. Like, they can adapt the system. Laine's on a line that is more offensive, but Laine shouldn't be blocking shots and shit. Like, Laine should play defense by going for a change.
that's the decent way to put it.
Like, put him in the offensive zone and play like, I don't know, anybody else. Yeah, in the defensive zone. Like, yeah, that's a shitty way. It's not like a complete game way to play the hockey, but I don't think you're gonna get one out of him.
That's what you were talking about earlier. That's exactly what we were talking about earlier, where it's like the coach is like, okay, I'm going to use you in the ways that you're good at, and then we work on the other stuff in practice. And you continue to go on because, Laine is a good enough player to have a positive impact on the game if you use him in the right way. He's going to go and score goals for you if you give him the chance to. You can work on the other stuff outside of it. You can get him to play a little bit more of a complete game in practice and start to work on that. Ultimately, if you try and do that for too long and it never works out or he just isn't listening, then sure, you can start working on benching or getting him sent out. But especially with Laine, it started within a week or two of him getting there. This isn't even enough time to make a significant change in his play style at all.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of a more broad question here, but like, as hockey fans, we love the transparency, and we like to know what's going on with, like, everything in a team. But I really don't like when coaches make those like statements about players like, I'm trying to change his game. It's like, couldn't you just work on that in practice and then like let the results speak for themselves? Like, why would you announce to the rest of the rest of the league, we're trying to make Laine into a two-way player? It's like, no, don't you want teams to like respect his shot and play him that way? Like, and then be like, oh shit, he's really good, like two-way. Also, like, wouldn't you prefer that? Like, I don't get it when coaches do that, where they're like, he's completely changing his game, and I'm going to let everybody know about it. They don't even have to watch tape. Like,
yeah, it's like pro scouts to beat him.
Yeah, I don't know.
But
it's like,
yeah, you're right, and it's also like, why is he announcing it? Like, is he trying to pad his resume or something? Like, look what I'm doing to Laine.
I fixed Laine.
I can do this with your star players.
Like, it's just, yeah, it's weird, and I get like he's trying to like publicly roast him, but it's like, why? I don't like when coaches use that tactic of like shaming their players to the media. I mean, like
It's
Gaudreau got
you
like
want to praise it player, like absolutely do it publicly and be like, hey, we have confidence in this guy, he's playing well. That's a boost for the player. But when you want to criticize their game, you do that in a closed door meeting with a player.
yeah. Well, it's like the Sutter and Gaudreau thing. It's like I don't think that's the right way to approach it, right? Like just to publicly roast him, and it's like he did that in LA, and apparently the players got tired of it, and like they like locked him out of the dressing room after a while, and like he did the whole thing where like there's that story where like the team lost, and then he said like no meals on the plane ride home or whatever, and the team was just like fuck this guy, like
yeah, like that's barbaric to withhold food from grown adults because they lost a hockey game.
Yeah, it's like maybe it's like, hey, I'm not happy. Like when we get back to practice, you guys are bag skating, or like you guys got to work on some shit. It's like that. I don't know. It just seems like a lot of these old school coaches just have these things in their repertoire that just like the new players just don't. They can't do it that way. Like it just.
Yeah, it's the generation coming up. Like we're not taking that type of shit from people, where it's bordering on mental, physical, and emotional abuse. Like it's not something that we're gonna put up with.
Yeah,
there's better ways to be leaders, to be coaches, to be mentors, and the old school methods of punishment and whatever else goes on, it just isn't working anymore.
Yeah,
you can still work on with a tough love. You can still criticize and critique and stuff like that, but it just doesn't work in the same way. You have to still find a way to be constructive with it.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be to the media. Just on practice, like in the team meetings and stuff, or one-to-one, whatever. But like, there's other coaches in the league that definitely healthy scratch, and like they'll be like, I didn't like your game. I'm gonna put this guy in. He's showing that he wants to compete and blah blah blah, and he's doing things the right way, and but like Jacob Vrana just got healthy scratched a couple times in Washington, and Laviolette was like, there's a few things in his game we want to work on. He also kind of needs a break. When we're gonna have some other guys in the lineup, and it's like, you don't have to fucking shame the guy for like having a poor defensive game or whatever, but it's like he'll get back in the lineup. He's just you got to show the coach that you're ready to play, and that you're. But I think the difference is Laviolette has the room, like they respect him,
yeah.
And Vrana's probably like, hey, yeah, I'll work on that. Like I want to improve on that so that I can get back in the lineup and play the game and whatever. But it's like in the meantime, Caps are winning, so it's not like Laviolette's like, I'm gonna bench Ovechkin. It's like it's like. No, you're like the team's still competitive. You're still playing like really good players. You're just swapping out one guy, and it doesn't make a huge impact.
And it's not a habit. It's not like a habit or a trend with Laviolette, like scratching players who don't deserve it or who have been playing fine. It's like a one-time. It's like Vrana's the first account of something like that happening, to my knowledge. Anyways, I don't follow the Caps that closely, but. And it's not, and like you said, it's not about publicly shaming the player. It's like, yeah, we just want to work on some stuff. Give him a break. That's not attacking the player. That's not degrading the player and his talents and abilities. That's just saying, like, yeah, we got some stuff to do.
Yeah. Yeah, like the media is going to ask, like, why is this guy not in the lineup or whatever? But you don't have to be like, he's a piece of garbage. Like, his game is complete ass, and I need to change his entire game. And,
yeah.
It's like.
I guess to be fair for Roslovic anyways, he said, I don't want to talk about a coach's decision. Didn't shame Roslovic yet, but I guess we'll wait and see when he gets scratched again.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just such a ongoing drama situation there that, like, it's such a distraction. And, like, I don't know, maybe that's part of the strategy for Torts, if it is a strategy, just to, like, keep it on him rather than the players. And so, like, the media focus is like, oh, Torts is an asshole, blah, blah, blah. Whereas it's, like, it's not like, hey, this player does suck.
Yeah, that's fair. Actually.
Maybe that's part of the shtick is like all the media is focused on me, like like that would actually be pretty smart, but like the results don't speak.
Yeah,
for that
it's either that or he's like desperate, where it's like the team sucks, he doesn't know what to do, and he's just like grasping at straws trying to find a way to turn it around.
That seems more more realistic. But, I mean, the truth probably lies somewhere in the middle, but I don't know. It just seems like a guy who would be leaving soon, probably. Like, if I had to guess, I would assume that Torts is probably done there at the end of the season. There's going to be some good coaches available that don't go to Seattle, like we've been talking about, and so, having a new guy there, I think would do well, and especially because Columbus was supposed to be relevant and in the playoff mix, and I guess they kind of still are, because that bottom of that division is really soft and weak. But if they don't make it.
As an aside, the teams in the top four, you got Florida at 56 points, Tampa at 54, Carolina at 53, then Nashville at 41.
Yeah.
So that fourth spot, I mean, Columbus is 5 points out. They still technically have a chance. They have to jump 3 other teams to get there. But like that bottom part of the division is pretty weak, so there's still hope.
Yeah, like there's Chicago, Dallas, and Nashville ahead of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it's possible, but unless they get hot.
The way the season's trending, I mean, they're 3-6-1 in their last 10 3-game losing streak right now, so they've got a long ways to turn it around if they want to be remotely relevant aside from what's going on with their coach.
Hey, well, Detroit beat Tampa 5-1, so I think anything's possible.
Good point.
Yeah, I don't know. This is a weird situation in Columbus. I think, like Kekalainen's got to make a change there in the offseason. If they don't make playoffs, like it's just like, come on. And they're going to lose Line A anyway, so they're going to have to trade his rates away.
And on that note, we're going to wrap things up for this time here on Clappercast. Make sure you rate and review this episode and toss a follow or subscribe our way. For more content, you can follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Clappercast Media or on Twitter at Clappercast. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll be back next week with more hockey talk.